You never cause problems. You go along with things, you say whatever works for you, you genuinely mean it most of the time. People describe you as easy to be around, relaxed, low maintenance, and somewhere along the way you started to believe that was a compliment. But there's something else happening underneath that, something quieter, something that doesn't show up in the way people talk about you, but shows up in the way you feel alone, even in a room full of people who like you. This video isn't about fixing you. It's about understanding something most easygoing people have never been told about themselves. Psychologists have a name for the trait that makes people agreeable, adaptable, and conflict avoidant. It sits inside what researchers call the Big Five personality model, under a dimension called agreeableness. High agreeableness isn't a flaw. It's associated with genuine warmth, cooperation, and social harmony. These are real strengths. But here's what the research also shows, and this part rarely makes it into the compliments. Highly agreeable people are significantly more likely to suppress their own preferences, absorb other people's emotional states, and struggle to identify what they actually want when no one is watching. The easygoing identity isn't just a personality. For many people, it becomes a strategy, one the nervous system adopted a long time ago for reasons that made perfect sense at the time. Think about the last time someone asked you, "What do you want to do tonight?" Notice what happened in your body. There's a small hesitation, a quick scan of the other person's face, a calculation, almost invisible, of what answer will cause the least disruption. And then you said something like, "I'm good with anything." On the surface, that looks like flexibility. Inside, something else is happening. Your brain is running a threat detection scan, deciding that expressing a preference carries a risk, the risk of disappointing someone, of being too much, of creating friction in a relationship you value. So you neutralize yourself before anyone else can, and you do it so automatically, so fluently, that you've stopped noticing you're doing it at all. This shows up everywhere, in meetings where you have the idea but wait for someone else to say it first, in friendships where you absorb the mood of the room and reshape yourself around it, in moments where you feel irritated or hurt and immediately dismiss it because it doesn't feel like a big enough reason to say something. The cost isn't dramatic. That's what makes it so hard to see. It accumulates slowly, in a quiet exhaustion, in a growing sense that people know you without really knowing you, in a loneliness that doesn't make logical sense. But here's where it gets more complicated, because the very thing that makes you easygoing also makes you unusually perceptive. And that combination creates a specific kind of hidden suffering that most people never get credit for carrying. Here's the uncomfortable part. Most easygoing people aren't conflict avoidant because they don't care. They're conflict avoidant because they care too much, and their nervous system learned at some point that caring openly was a liability. Neuroscience research on social threat response shows that for some people, interpersonal conflict activates the same neural pathways as physical danger. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, doesn't distinguish cleanly between a raised voice and a broken bone. Both register as threat. So when you go quiet, when you accommodate, when you make yourself smaller, that's not weakness. That's your brain doing exactly what it was trained to do, keep you safe. The problem is, the brain doesn't update automatically. It keeps running old protection software in situations that no longer require it. Think of it like a thermostat that was calibrated in a cold house. The thermostat learned when tension rises, turn the heat down immediately, and it got very good at that. It became automatic, efficient, invisible. But now you're in a different house, a warmer one, with people who could actually handle your temperature, and the thermostat is still running the same old program. It dials you down before you've even had a chance to feel what the room actually needs. Psychologists call this a schema, a deep mental framework built from repeated experience that filters how you interpret new situations. Your schema learned conflict is dangerous, your needs are secondary, harmony must be protected at all costs. And because schemas operate below conscious awareness, you don't decide to be easygoing each time. You just are. It happens before the thought forms. This pattern almost always has a beginning. For some people, it started in a household where emotional unpredictability was the norm, where the safest move was to become invisible, agreeable, the one who didn't add to the tension. For others, it was subtler. Maybe expressing needs led to being called difficult. Maybe being flexible was the way to earn love or keep it. Maybe you simply watched the people around you and concluded very early that the world ran more smoothly when you bent. Developmental psychologists describe this as an adaptive response. The child who learned to accommodate wasn't making a mistake. They were being intelligent, reading their environment and adjusting for survival. The behavior that once protected you didn't disappear when the threat did. It became part of how you move through the world. None of this makes you broken. It doesn't make you a pushover or a people pleaser in some shameful sense. Easygoing people often have a depth of emotional attunement that more assertive personalities don't develop in the same way. You read rooms well. You notice things. You hold space naturally. These are not small things. The question isn't how to become someone else. The question is whether the strategy you developed is still serving you, or whether it's costing you something you haven't fully accounted for. Here's the paradox that most easygoing people eventually have to sit with. The very adaptability that makes you easy to be around can also make you hard to truly reach. Because when you shape yourself around other people's comfort, you become a mirror, and mirrors don't have a center. People feel good near you. They feel comfortable, held, accepted. But sometimes they sense, even if they can't name it, that they're not quite meeting you, that there's a version of you they're not getting access to. And you feel it too, that particular loneliness of being liked for your availability rather than known for who you actually are. If you felt invisible in your relationships, not ignored, but invisible, this is probably part of why. Not because people don't care, but because you've been handing them an edited version, and the full version has been waiting, quietly, to be let out. So what do you actually do with this? The first thing is to practice noticing before deciding. Before you say, "I'm fine with anything," pause, just long enough to ask yourself, what do I actually want here? You don't have to say it yet. You're just building the habit of consulting yourself first. The brain gets better at accessing preferences when you stop bypassing them automatically. The second thing is to let yourself have small frictions. Disagreement in low-stakes situations over where to eat, which movie to watch, which route to take, is practice data for the nervous system. Each small moment where you express a preference and nothing terrible happens is evidence the amygdala can update on. Over time, the threat response recalibrates. The third thing is to distinguish between genuine flexibility and self-erasure. True easygoing people have preferences and can share them. They choose not to make issues of things that don't matter to them. That's different from having preferences and silencing them because expressing them feels unsafe. One is freedom, the other is a cage that looks like a personality. The fourth thing, and this is the one that takes the most time, is to let people experience your disappointment, your preference, your disagreement, without immediately smoothing it over. Not to create drama, but to give people the chance to actually know you. The relationships that can hold your full self are the ones worth building. Here's the single idea to carry forward. Being easygoing is not the problem. Losing yourself inside it is. The same nervous system flexibility that makes you adaptable can be redirected. Instead of using it to shrink around others, you can use it to stay present with yourself, to be genuinely calm rather than performed calm. That shift is the difference between a person who has no needs and a person who knows their needs and chooses when and how to express them. One is exhausting, the other is actually free. You are not too much. You never were. The version of you that learned to minimize, to accommodate, to dissolve quietly into whatever the room needed, that version was doing its best with what it understood. It kept relationships, it kept peace, it kept you safe in the ways it knew how. But you've been carrying something that was never meant to be permanent. Your preferences are not inconveniences. Your emotions are not interruptions. Your presence, your actual full, unedited presence, is not a burden on the people who genuinely care about you. The quiet you've maintained isn't peace. It's a held breath. And at some point, you're allowed to exhale. If any part of this felt like something you've known for a long time but never had language for, that's worth paying attention to. There's more to understand about how your mind works, about the patterns it holds, and about the version of yourself that's been waiting on the other side of that understanding. Take your time with it.